Survey to order. It's now 8:30 a.m. on August 12, 2020. This meeting is being held virtually with Google Meet due to the COVID-19 stay safe order. In compliance with Utah's open meeting laws, this meeting is being recorded in its entirety and it is classified as a public record. The following board members are in attendance: myself, Elissa Richards, Dave Barbrecht, Rick Chestnut, Ken Fleck, Pete Kilborn, and I don't believe Tom is on. Is that correct? Is Tom on?
I don't see him.
Tom Faddis, okay. The following board member is absent: Sam Quigley, and the following individuals. Sorry. The following individuals representing the Utah Geological Survey and the Department of Natural Resources are in attendance: Bill Keach, Division Director; Mike Hylland, Deputy Director; Jodi Patterson, Financial Manager; Cheryl Guston, Board Secretary; Jay Hill, Mike Vandenberg. Is there anybody else that I don't have written down?
I think you missed me, Mark.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Sorry, Mark.
I'm here though.
I know. I see you. Welcome, Mark. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Wasn't written on there. Bill, is there anybody else from the UGS that we need to acknowledge?
Not at this time. A couple other program managers will join us after the break.
Okay. All right. We want to welcome all visitors and participants and interested persons at this time. And as a courtesy to everyone in this meeting, we'll ask for all cell phones, pagers, and other electronic devices to be turned off or changed to silent mode. Board motions and votes will be reflected in our minutes. And let's go ahead and proceed with the agenda. We are going to start with action items with the approval of the minutes of from the meeting of April 15th, and would like to seek a motion to approve those minutes.
I move, this is Pete. I move we approve the minutes.
Okay.
And this is Mark. Motion?
Was that Mark? Mark, you were the second, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's see. How about a formal, we need to move to a formal approval of project proposals. Do we need to run those through at all? There we are.
I have 5 of them here. There's 3 on this page and 2 on that.
Okay, and we've seen all of these and approved these via email. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to formally approve the proposals?
So moved.
And I'm sorry, who was that?
That was me, Ken. I move that we
Ken,
approve
thanks.
the contract proposals.
Thank you, Ken. Do we need
Rick Chestnut, I will second that.
Thank you, Rick. All righty. Potential funding FY 2021 challenges.
Say aye.
Excuse me, sorry. I apologize. I jumped ahead. Director's report, COVID-19. Take it away, Bill.
Make sure I got my mic on. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Elissa. So a series of slides here, and we'll have a few people jump in, and feel free to ask questions as needed. Happy to take them. If I don't see it and somebody else, if I miss somebody who has a question, somebody else jump in and let me know I'm missing them. But, COVID-19 continues to be, an impact. The majority of our folks are still working from home. Jodi comes in most days. Star who's our I don't know, it's administrative assistant. That's the right word. But she mans our front desk upstairs. And she has chosen to come in and work every day so far. And so bless her heart for her efforts. A few of our folks from the Core Research Center are out there, some on alternating days. And the bookstore, I think I got a slide on that, which was closed, is now back open, and we have 2 staff in there. But other than that, and we try to have one program manager on site each day. But other than that, the balance of the 67 employees are working from home. We continue to emphasize in our staff meetings, which we are now holding, we hold them monthly virtually. Personal safety, both from a COVID and from other perspectives, because it's field season and it's hot out there. We've had some sessions on heat safety. We told them if you get really hot and you're tired, and you're in your car to cool down and and you go to sleep, go ahead. We don't care if somebody calls and says a state employee was sleeping in their car. Because it'd be a safety thing. We're not telling them just to take a nap. We're saying no, but if you get really hot outside and you sit in that car to cool down, it can make you drowsy. We don't want them driving drowsy. So we also emphasize, using good precautions for COVID-19 to, we've got hand sanitizers throughout the building. The cleaning crew from DNR comes through the building every day and sprays something on all the touch surfaces in the building. We have masks available for staff to use if they don't have their own. We're just trying to make sure we follow all state and local guidelines. For example, Salt Lake is still in orange, so we're using orange protocol. Whereas in the Cedar City office, it's in yellow. But we're making sure that folks are aware and that they're making every effort to be safe. I often get asked, when do you want us to be coming back to work? And I says, there's no rush. We are not pushing it at this time. I listened to a thing 1 or 2 weeks ago, and they're talking about if you count the time from when this all started, which for us was about March 15th, till the time we think there might be a vaccine out there, because I think we're in this till there's a vaccine. We've still got probably more days in front of us than behind us. For me, that was a sobering thought. So anyway, that's what we're trying to emphasize, that, do things that keep you safe. And if you feel someone's not, I had an employee says, well, what if, we're out in the field and someone doesn't have a mask and wants to come out and talk to us? I said, I'd keep a few extra masks and ask them to put it on. So anyway, that's our emphasis. Field work, which we probably started a little later this year than in the past, just because of all the trying to make sure we had protocols. We've told folks if you prefer not to ride in another vehicle, to take 2 cars to do field work if you're going out together. The only people this really impacts are those doing wetlands mapping, because they tend to go out in teams. But we've given them that flexibility to take 2 cars and meet each other out on site. We've had a lot of grants written, and we'll hear more about that later this morning. I've asked 3 of the program managers to come in and talk about grants and a few other things. In the bookstore, our normal hours used to be 8. We're opening at 10 now. We have 1 last staff there. That we had 3 in the previously. One of them, once COVID hit, did not want to come in at all. We offered them some alternative work options to work by themselves, and they chose not to. So in the end, they're no longer working at the bookstore. So we wanted to give the 2 folks left there a couple of hours in the morning to get a handle on things before we open. Biggest challenge in the bookstore has been folks coming in not wanting to wear masks. But there's signs everywhere in the lobby for DNR and in our building. We've got a plastic shield set up, and they say sometimes there's a few people that just seem to want to come in and argue about it. And it's not our call even. Our call is whether to do what the governor's told us to do or not. That's our call. And we're following what the governor's asked us to do, that there's a mask in all buildings. A mask must be worn in all government buildings. So we're trying not to have folks argue with us. We're trying to funnel them through security before the end of the bookstore. Any questions so far? Okay.
Would it be possible to have them check in even though they're going to the bookstore like we do when we come into the main part of the building, and let whoever's responsible for signing them in tell them they got to put a mask on or leave?
Yeah, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
It wasn't that way initially. So I talked to Todd Royce is the security manager, director for DNR. He's he's an ex-highway patrol guy. He's really good. And so he set up signs directing them to check in with either Greg, who's the security guard there, or Gina, who tends to be behind our information desk. So we're trying to do that. So good suggestions. Short of putting up cords and walls in the lobby, that's what we're doing. Thank you. Any other questions? So a few personnel things. We've got a number of student volunteers, mostly working on hazards. Raul Rios, he's actually a student that I had down in BYU. He's a native, he's from Mexico, and he's actually working to translate the putting down roots in earthquake country from English into Spanish for us. And we'll get that out there and post it as soon as he gets it done. About 14% of our state population is Hispanic now. And so this seemed like a good thing. If you go to earthquakes.utah.gov, which is the website that we built for emergency management folks, right after the earthquake, they've added a section called Noticias, which is Spanish for news. And someone's putting up, translating their press releases from there to keep as many folks informed as we can. And Abby and Rachel are working on some other projects for hazards to get some data organized, part of our data preservation project. Wetland assessment, we actually hired someone who then left for a permanent job. And we have two other ladies, Elizabeth and Elissa, who are paid as interns. I think Elizabeth is going to be moved to closer to full-time because there's a lot of grants for wetlands work. And so summertime is the time to do wetlands work. And so we're a little behind, but we're trying to expand the hours of some of these interns so we can get the work done for the season close down on us. But Diane does a great job with the wetlands program. We probably don't talk enough about Diane's efforts, but she is truly incredible at being able to write grants that provide full funding on an amazing array of wetlands work. So anyway, this is just the latest couple of people she's got to work for her and do good work. Rosemary Faslin joined us less than a year ago in the Geologic Information Outreach Program as a GIS analyst, but her skill set was really way beyond that. When Doug Sprinkle retired, Grant said he wanted to replace her or replace Doug with a GIS analyst rather than another field mapper. Because previously he'd hired Zach as a GIS analyst and then moved him to field mapper. So he was really down an analyst. So we ran a national ad, had over 60 applicants. They culled it down to 15 people, 13 of whom chose to interview. And of these applicants from around the country, our own internal Rosemary rose to the top and was selected by a committee of GIS specialists to step in. This is a really, really important role here. Again, we'll hear more from Grant later, but well over $500,000 in grants from the USGS in the coming year to do mapping. And there's a big part of this that's going to be, it's almost an all hands on deck project, but a big part of it is to have a really good GIS analyst. The USGS, United States Geological Survey, is required that all new maps submitted be in what they call their GEMS format. And it's a particular database style. And we are needing to transition to that. So Rosemary's job is not just to make maps, but to educate the rest of our staff on how to get us ready to go to this GEMS format, make sure everything's in that format and submitted. So Rosemary's got a big task, and we're confident she's up to it. Last one is that Chidsey called me a couple months ago and said, I've decided to pull the plug and retire. And so on October 1st, he will be out. And Tom is an outstanding individual. I've known Tom for 20 plus years. He's one of the guys I called when I began to consider this job because I wanted to get his insights. I value them. But this will be a big loss for the survey. But Doug Sprinkle and now Tom, and there's probably a couple of others in another year. But we have a lot of experience here. Now, the good thing is that Tom has said he wants to be the emeritus status and he still wants to continue to do things with us and for us. So he doesn't want to necessarily walk away. He just wants to work on his own terms from here on out. So well earned and well deserved. As his going away party, so to speak, he had 5 tomes, literally of work over the last 15 years that he wanted to get done. So when the pandemic hit, he's been busy at home getting these papers all finalized. And I've already reviewed 2 of them. And there's 3 others coming my way in the next few weeks. So anyway, that's Tom Chidsey. We're going to miss him.
Yep.
Yes, we are.
Yep. So good thing is I have his phone number. Thanks to the board. Just again, from terms of recognitions, we often do recognitions. And part of this is just because it's a public meeting. I wanted to recognize this again. 3 great nominations you all told me from Rick Ellis's and Joe Moore's editing or abridging of a whole series of papers on geothermal resources, and Greg McDonald and others work on Wasatch Faults, to the Lucy Jordan and her group on this groundwater budget study. They were all really good projects, and we just want to make sure they got recognized. So we announced that in our staff meeting last week, and they are aware. And there is some small monies that will go to them in recognition of their great efforts. For those that are not within the UGS, I will be sending a letter out here in a couple of days to those other folks who are not currently employees of the USGS. So again, thanks for your efforts to review them.
UGS.
What did I say?
USGS.
UGS. Sorry. Too many acronyms. Too many acronyms.
I just wanted to say I wanted to thank the board for all sharing their thoughts and input. And let me tell you, it was a hard decision. And I feel like we had quite a few discussions internally about within the board, because they were all excellent. So anyway, the process was great, and we really appreciate these really stellar projects and the people behind all those projects.
Yep, they do good work. Thank you. I had an email, I think, from Pete this morning saying we should talk about the field trip. And I believe we've already decided in discussions with Elissa that we're going to hold off on this year. Any discussions on this? On the decision to postpone it? No discussion. Everyone's in agreement?
I fully agree with that.
Yes.
Okay.
If I thought it was safe to travel right now, I'd be in Maine.
There's a lake you go to every year in a cabin, right?
Yeah.
With 15 geologists.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Man. We've all been impacted in ways that we can't even count. I would normally get over to Colorado to go see my grandkids. But,
we might think about having it in the spring if
we could do that.
If we're in a situation that people are comfortable with, then it would be a different time of year to go, but all kinds of cool stuff to see. So,
but it might be if we're going to go, if we still go to southwestern Utah, it might actually be a preferable time.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I am sitting here. Let's see.
I don't know. Look at the beautiful vista.
Oh,
That's out my backyard here in Hurricane. So you can all come down here and stay. We'll set this up. But yeah, there's great stuff. That's the Virgin Anticline right there. So anyway, yeah, we'll do this, next year. Rather than the spring or in the fall, we can debate that in future meetings, but I like the idea. In terms of just kind of highlighting some things that have been done since we last met. I know we had talked about this, but we got the hazards portal officially released. Has anybody not seen this? Okay, I'm here. I'm guessing everybody's. The reason I
Yeah.
said I had a link to it here that you can. But I just think this is really cool. We've had a lot of visits to this site already. Taking a little time to get the script going. There we go. So anyway, if you want to visit it, the link's out there. You can access it from our website. Again, for public, for those who may be attending from the public, there's a lot of good stuff you can go look at and see here. So anyway, we'll go back. So anyway, that was officially released May 20th. A couple of other big.
Bill, has there been any more talk about trying to put some kind of an education program together for the news media? So that the next time we have an earthquake, we get more informed reporting?
There has been discussion, and I know on the Seismic Safety Commission, we talked a little bit about it. But I don't know if there's been any real formal efforts done to do that yet. But that's worth considering. We can feed back to Steve Bowman and Emily and their group to see what they're, I know they've been busy field mapping right now because this is the season for that. But I think when the field season gets over, we can probably revisit that. Great suggestion as before. Okay. Again, you probably may have seen this. The clip there is a Facebook post that I saw it on my Facebook feed and I just snapped a quick image of it. But we released at about the same time Critical Minerals of Utah and Proven and Hypothetical Helium Resources in Utah. And the co-author of that is in our midst today. Isn't that right, Mark?
Yes.
Mark Eccles was a co-author on that.
Wow. Good.
Yeah. So that was mainly a piece of work from SITLA that the UGS was able to put out, get it formatted and get it out to the public. On a side note to the helium side, I understand there's one well in the works to be drilled out near Moab this year, later this year or maybe January, and they're looking for helium. So there's activity out there. There are people that are interested.
There are several companies actually that have leases in Utah for helium and that are contemplating taking the next step forward, which is drilling.
Yeah. And yesterday I had a call from an old colleague that I knew in my Halliburton days, who's working with investors that looking for old mining operations. And they look at Utah as a favorable place to come. And he was reading the Critical Minerals report and was surprised to find my name there. He didn't know I was with the survey.
Oh, wow.
So he picked up the phone and we talked for about an hour about opportunities with critical minerals and mines in general. They're out looking at the currently closed down Lisbon operations in Moab. So anyway, my point is that these publications are being used by people. People are looking at them, and we get calls. And so Utah Energy Landscape is another one that Mike Vandenberg puts out each year that we print up. We sent copies to all the members of the Natural Resources Committee. They rely on it, and we get questions all the time on it. So a number of good publications from Energy and Minerals this year. Other good publications as well, but just highlighting Energy and Minerals right now. There's the zoom up so you could actually read it. Other thing is this downturn in the economy, put it in the petroleum industry. There's been a big, and Mark could probably address this better than I, a lot of companies have left or are contemplating leaving Utah. Particularly a lot of the larger ones, which has in turn driven a whole slew of core donations to the Core Research Center. because a lot of scientists, they could just walk away and leave it in a field, the rocks, the cores, but they're trying to find good homes for it. And so Finley has donated, quite a bit of core. Barry, some of these cores, I'm not even sure where they came from. I'm just working off of Mike Vandenberg's notes to me. The core, some guys over in Denver had some orphan cores from San Juan County. The Oklahoma Geological Survey apparently had a number of Utah cores that they don't see any reason for them to be owning or holding. So those have been shipped out. Anadarko we changed a number of emails and discussed with them about donating all of their core, but the company that's bought their assets wanted to keep some of them. We're still anticipating some core from down in the Paradox, as well as the Uinta Basin coming from Anadarko here in the near future. And I'm probably missing a few other cores that may be headed our way, but this all hit during the pandemic. We had a big slabbing project for red leaf that we were working on that we got done, and this core just kept showing up, and it was just stacked on our aisles for a while. And so we're slowly trying to clear that out. A lot of core is going to start to move up north to a storage facility, up Clearfield up there. We're going to probably high grade some of there's a lot of stuff on our shelves that haven't probably been looked at in 30 years, and we could probably move that and make sure that in our current core facility. Mike Vandenberg would like to do nothing more than get a couple $1 million to expand our core center. But we all know in this time and age, that is not going to happen. So we're looking at other creative ways to high grade what's available to the public. What is interesting is that there are a number of companies that are still interested in coming to Utah to work. Mike Vandenberg and Ryan Gall are going to be presenting with an oil company working out in the Uinta Basin. They just swapped out, I think it's EP has swapped out a lot of their staff, and they need to get re-educated, and we're going to be out there. There's a couple of other companies that have expressed interest in the Uinta Basin.
So Bill?
Yes, sir.
With respect to EP, they entered bankruptcy in the fall of 2019, Chapter 11,
Yep.
and they had a prepackaged structured exit planned for March. And then when the price of oil collapsed, essentially the collateral for that, the loans that would have been necessary to make that happen, evaporated. And so their bankruptcy blew up in federal court.
Wow.
In the middle of March. There's been movement on that in the last couple of weeks, and they have a new strategy for exiting Chapter 11, and they plan to do that before the end of September.
Okay. But I think it related to that, I suspect a number of the people left that pre-planned it.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's new folks that don't have a lot of experience. And so we're being asked to come out and help.
Also, the rig count is going to start to climb fairly soon from 0.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That'll be good. Okay. I haven't heard that yet. I don't know. Do you know of any in particular? Or you in general?
I got a note from somebody at the tribe earlier this week saying that Finley's going to put a rig up, and there were a couple of others that are looking at doing the same thing in the short term.
Okay, good. Do you know if there's any discussion on the Monument Butte field? Isn't that the one they shut in?
They shut it in, and the last thing I was told, but that was in June, was that they were going to start turning it on.
Okay.
In July, but I have not. I'll touch base with somebody there and let you know what's going on there. Maybe
Okay.
Mike knows.
Okay, we can ask him later. So anyway, we just think it's going to be a long crawl out from there. But the point is that as this turnover goes, people looking for ways to preserve data.
Yeah, Mike has some shocking numbers to share with you.
Yeah.
With regard to production.
Yeah, and we'll leave that. I'll leave that for him to do. I didn't put it here. In terms of groundwater and wetlands projects, like I said, we have some really good work going on in both areas. We were hoping, we're supposed to be, the National Park Service has asked us to put in a second monitoring well out near Moab. We've got one in Courthouse Wash, if I remember correctly, and they're going to put one in 7 Mile Canyon, which is not that far away. And there'll be some slides that Hugh, we'd hope to have Stefan talk to you guys about it from the drill site, but it kept getting pushed back. It was supposed to have drilled the well a few weeks ago. But again, due to COVID constraints and procedures needing to be cleared through DC before they got out, my understanding is they're actually mobilizing today. So I don't know if we'll hear from Stefan or not, but Hugh's on ready to cover that. But so that news actually came yesterday. They can mobilize today. So the USGS actually does the drilling of the well. We handle all the efforts. You saw the proposal to monitor it for like the next 50 years. But the goal there is to get after 2 aquifers. Because if I remember right, Park Service has rights to everything in the Entrada sandstone. And so this well will look at both the Entrada and the Navajo as reservoirs. Folks are out in the field working right now, every day, looking at things in Juab Valley, Bryce Canyon. Some other projects from within the DNR is a look at evapotranspiration in Utah, which is trying to figure out how much water gets used by the plants. That's probably a good way to say that. A lot of work going out in the Great Basin, trying to get some baselines established. Cache Valley for wetlands. Just got word of a notice of a big geothermal project, which will touch both minerals and our groundwater group. The University of Nevada got a big proposal through the Department of Energy to look at geothermal resources in both Western Utah and Eastern Nevada. That project will kick off either later this year or early next year. Briefly touch on Bonneville Salt Flats. One of the reasons I went out there just to see it is that, I don't know if you remember a year ago, for fiscal year 20, the legislature carved out $5 million to go to the USGS.
Yeah.
There was contingent on $45 million coming from the BLM for a long-term salt flats restoration project. And the short version is that the Racing Association and their lobbyists, it's actually the Specialty Parts Manufacturers Association for the racers, and their lobbyists have been lobbying hard for several years to increase how much salt gets laid down out there. Intrepid today, as part of their agreements, they take their salt, clean it up out of their slurries, and take it out to the salt flats and spread it. Been a lot of debate over the last 15 years about how beneficial or productive that really is. And so far, the studies are kind of, well, maybe. And so the racers think that if we could just put down a lot more salt, we'd see the benefit. But we're not sure that, will happen. So fast forward through the pandemic, that language got changed, and they've passed to fiscal year 21, $1 million based on matching funds. We're not real clear how much matching it has to be from the feds. So we've been meeting over the last 6 months, 4 months, with the BLM, Intrepid, Brenda Bowen, who's a researcher at the University of Utah, and our folks, to kind of come up with what could we do if we had $1 million from the state, and if we had another $1 million from the feds, what could we do out there? And we converged on that in all these meetings. I think that if we're going to go forward with this and to free some of that money up, we're going to have to show in my perspective, 2 points. Do something in this year that shows that it's tangible, show some tangible results, and then research that tries to support or say whether those tangible efforts were beneficial or not. Did we grow salt? And so we're still working on documents. I've got Hugh Hurlow. I met with Brenda Bowen from the U again, as I said, and Eric Rogers, who works for Intrepid. And one idea is, can we find a way to make more salt at Intrepid, which is the mine operation out there that we went to. You remember that on our last trip. And do it with less water. Because right now there's water wells pulling off of the aquifers related to the alluvium coming off of the hills there, the Silver Mountains out there. So anyway, trying to figure out how can we make more salt with less water, because a lot of water is lost in those canals moving the salt slurry around. So we're trying to come up with some ways to make more salt with less water, and then to apply research to that or studies that can validate, did this work or not. So anyway, kind of a long explanation, but we're trying to find some ways to free up that money to be used to prove whether this may or may not work. And our thought is that even if we don't, there's no way we're going to spend at the UGS $1 million in a year on research on groundwater. It's just, we don't have it. You know, our staff right now, our groundwater staff is probably booked at about 70% funded as it is. And that's basically full, you know, everybody's booked full time for the coming year. And I've made it aware to my DNR that if we go forward this, we'll have to bring in some more staff to do that, even if it's students. And we'll have to reach out to the University of Utah with Brenda Bowen and her research group to pull this off. And what Intrepid wants out of it, the way the deals were all originally written between the lobbyists and Intrepid was, Intrepid would only commit to sell salt, $5 a ton. So 200,000 tons would be $1 million. They would take those funds that they generate and upgrade their infrastructure to try and produce more salt with less water. But how they do that is really would be left up to them. Because government funds cannot be used to build infrastructure. So we would just be buying a product. But we're trying to work with them to make sure we understand what they're going to do so that we have research that monitors it. Any questions?
Yeah, this is Pete. I've got a question. So if you showed the slides of this year being really good, why was it really good? And how does that relate to the need for more?
Well, from the racers' perspective, they talk about in the good old days, they would have like up to 13 miles of track. And they're getting about 6 miles of track now out of it. In wet years, it's interesting, we tend to get less salt because the fresh water dissolves it. But then in the dry years, as it starts to dry out, we get pretty good salt growth. There's in places, they say it used to be multiple feet thick, and now it's only like a foot thick. So the reason is that there's, you know, the salt lay could be better. It could be a thicker salt base, and it could be wider. But to get wider, you got to get water on it that spreads the lake boundaries. So it's a complicated problem. As to, you know, the salt footprint certainly has shrunk over the years, and it's gotten thinner. The guys at Intrepid will tell you there's a 15-year cycle between wet and dry. And just depending on where you are in that cycle, you can have thicker and broader salt. But, you know, that's more anecdotal than proven. The reason that they said the salt was good this year was that there was a lot less holes in the salt. Because I did not realize it. They'll spend a month or two dragging the salt and using dozers and graders to smooth it out and to fill in all the little holes that affect, you know, the cars racing out there. But that in turn raises a lot of science questions. It seems to me you're plugging all the pore holes and all the, you're limiting the capillary action that usually is required to grow salt. Did that answer your question, Pete?
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so bottom line is we're trying to find ways to access some of those funds and bring them in. And DNR doesn't want all that money just passing through UGS to other agencies. They want some of it to stay within our agency. I've told them they can, if they got 50 million, I'd just take, 10% as an overhead. And that would be good for me. But that hasn't happened yet. Moving on to mapping. The USGS, they've got a lot of additional money in the coming year for all kinds of things. There's been renewed emphasis and increased focus on things like critical minerals, geologic hazards. They've got new water budget studies that they're working across the country. The first one is back east. The second one will be in the upper Colorado River, which is mostly Colorado. But there's been a lot of extra money, and we got a number of calls. I mean, earlier this year, even after the pandemic hit, saying, we've got an extra $100,000 available. Can you put together a project of no cost share? And so we've responded to a number of those inquiries. And Grant Willis and his crew wrote some phenomenal grants, which were funded. And again, he'll talk more about that in detail. Stephanie Mills and Andrew Rupke put together a project proposal. They got funded for, Mike Vanden might have me, Gold Hill, if I got that right, which got funded as well. So anyway, there's just been a lot of money coming. The challenge, so what that you're going to see in our numbers here is that we're pushing, 2.3 million-ish of outside grants that will come in, which is way above our average, which will help us when we get talking about budget. But it's not clear that money will last, given how much money they've printed and given away during the pandemic, the feds, that, some of this may get dialed back in coming years. So it's something we're going to appreciate while we have it, but we're not going to expect it to last. Maybe that's a good way to put it. But there is a lot of money coming, and in the coming year, it's going to, like I said, this is going to certainly require an all-hands effort. There's a lot of people in GIO who will be working on this mapping stuff to try and account for all this money. Most of the money, I said there is a few exceptions, but most of this money requires match. Meaning, when the feds give us $100,000, I get to put in $100,000 of folks' time. So, creates some difficulties at times, but we're going to try and get our way through it. So, Grant will talk more about that. But these are the areas. Some of the areas they gave us a lot of options to look at. One was border matching with other states, because the Utah's geologic map might not line up with what Colorado says. So they're trying to clean that up. Part of this is the UGS has a bigger effort to make national maps that are in agreement with each other. And they're trying to get into 3D mapping and subsurface as well. So they're wanting to ensure that at the boundaries, there's a lot better matching than has gone on. But it certainly may surprise you, but a geologist in Utah might not agree to use the same name for a formation that a geologist in Colorado uses. Imagine that. But that happens. Some of the higher scale ones, 500K geologic map databases, making sure that the national databases, this comes into the GEMS that I talked to you. It's an acronym, but it's how do they form and store geologic information. And they're wanting to get all these databases standardized across the states. So mapping's got a big chore in front of them in the coming year. GIO, I asked Mike Hylland if he just talked about GIO. I'm going to turn over to Mike for a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Hey, Bill, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just continue sharing your
Yeah,
screen there, and I'll just talk to it?
yeah, that's great. And I've got two
Oh.
slides here for you. And if you want, I can go live to the new bookstore webpage, but that's a snapshot of it. But I have a link. We can go to
Okay.
it if you want.
Sure. Yeah, I guess starting with the bookstore, Bill mentioned we've cut back on the hours because we're down to 2 staff, and there continues to be concern with clientele coming in, and Brian Butler just relates story after story about interesting encounters that he has with, folks. And a lot of these people are just coming in basically off the street. They're looking for a cool place to hang out and chat. And so they've kind of got their hands full with just dealing with the whole COVID situation and its impact to retail. So our current hours are 10 to 5, and that's giving Brian a couple hours in the morning to continue to plug away on some kind of ongoing cleanup issues related to the new online store. But we launched the store end of July, and immediately our online sales went up. In the first weekend that the online store was live, we did about $500 worth of online sales, which is as much as some of our slower months in the past with the old online store. So we're really encouraged with the use that we're already seeing on the store. And I couldn't be happier with the way that it turned out. Yeah, Bill, if you want to go ahead and open up, let's take a quick look. So the home page just has a nice clean layout. And I should mention, this was really a broad team effort. It involved a good half a dozen people across GIO, including Lance Weaver down in the Cedar City office, working on a lot of the back end modification of the Shopify platform that we're using. Of course, Brian Butler and Gentry Hammerschmidt in the bookstore getting the product catalog transferred over. Martha Jensen was key in helping out with that as well, just getting the database set up the way it needs to be. Jackie DeWolf did pretty much the design and layout, and also Jodi Patterson. She was key in helping us work through issues related to the point of sale equipment down at the sales counter and the PCI compliance issues that we have to deal with there. So really a team effort. Let's see, the maps are the bread and butter of the bookstore. And Bill, maybe if you could click on the geologic map selector, just open up that window. This, no, actually, well, let's go back a page. So instead of from the drop-down menu, sorry, we didn't rehearse this. Yeah, that one right there, the geologic map selector. This basically takes you to the map index that is part of the UGS website. So it's drawing from the same database. Here it'll fill in the map outlines. You click on a map. Let's see if that's one we've got. Yep. Duchesne 30 by 60. You click on that window there. It'll take you to a product page that describes the map in general. If you scroll down, you get a nice description, overview of the map. So to me, this is comparable to Barnes & Noble online shopping experience. It's just a vastly superior user experience to the old shopping cart. So that's probably good. If you get a chance, maybe check it out. URL is just utahmapstore.com.
So one thing I can just pass about the map, I didn't realize, the DNR, the DWR, Division of Wildlife desk for getting licenses is right before you go into the bookstore. And according to Brian, our bookstore manager, the DWR won't tell them anything about where the hunting places are. They just sell them a license, and they send them to the bookstore. And Brian says they've gotten really proficient at telling people and showing them and selling them maps on where to go find their elk or their bison or goat or whatever it is. There's a fair amount of traffic that comes straight from wildlife into our office for these types of maps. Well, just a side note, I learned a while back. Okay.
Yeah, those guys do provide a lot of support for other divisions, most notably wildlife and state parks as well. We sell state parks passes through the bookstore. But yeah, in the fall, the bookstore gets really busy with hunters coming in and wanting to know where the hunting unit boundaries are, and our guys are more up to speed on that than anyone else. So yeah, Bill mentioned here social media posts, just kind of FYI, Jackie DeWolf is our point person for the social media, and she's super talented in that regard. Just is able to highlight our current publications as they come out, just kind of interesting geologic information on a daily basis. Our Facebook account is up to 9,000 followers. Twitter, we've got 6,000 followers. She just created an Instagram account really within the last year. We're already up to 1,800 followers there. Kind of along those lines are public inquiries. I thought I might mention this last fiscal year was a record-setting year for public inquiries coming into the UGS, probably in large part due to the Magna earthquake. But we had a total of a little over 4,800 inquiries, and those are walk-ins, telephone calls, and Ask a Geologist link on our website. By comparison, over the last couple of years, we've averaged about 4,500. 3 to 4 years ago, we were down at about 3,800. So over the last 3-4 years, our inquiries to the UGS have increased by about 1,000 a year. So our message is getting out there. People are aware of us and recognizing us as a source of good information. As far as the publication mill, things haven't slowed down a bit. Our editorial group and technical review process just plugs along, people working effectively from home. We published a total of 83 publications this past year. That includes internal UGS publication series, as well as outside journal articles, includes meeting abstracts, that kind of thing. Over the last 6 years, our average has been 88. So we're just right about at our average number of publications. Let's see, wanted to mention real quick, Bill mentioned the USGS funding for state map supplemental and National Geologic Map database projects that Grant will be talking about a little bit later. And GIO is going to play a key role and have a lot of involvement in those projects in the current fiscal year. So our GIS analysts and database management support will be relied on heavily for those as we move forward. And I just want to touch real quick on our new digital object identifier system. If you're not familiar with this, it's a permanent identifier for publications. digital publications. So no matter what happens to a publication's URL over time, the DOI number will never change. And so academic journals have been using the DOI system for 15 years or so now. USGS uses it. A couple of the other state geological surveys use it. We implemented it last year. Suzanne Sawyer, our librarian, gets monthly resolution reports. A resolution is basically successful access to a publication through the DOI system. In the first 11 months that we had DOI implemented, we were averaging about 1,200 successful resolutions a month. Since April, that monthly average has gone up to over 15,000. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, if that stays that way over the long term, or if there's a spike there, you know, again, maybe related to the Magna earthquake. But I think it's just another illustration that people are accessing our stuff. They're finding it and they're using it. I think, unless there's any questions, comments, that was everything I wanted to touch on for GIO.
Okay. You think it'd be okay if I showed him the preview of the calendar?
Sure.
I don't want to overstep my authority here.
No, I think yeah, that'd be fine. we're just a couple 3 weeks out from it going public, so
That's this year's cover. And I love that picture. I think it's a Mark Milligan picture. Is that right?
it is.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought hey, so that's getting ready to go to press. So be looking for that.
September issue of Survey Notes is also just about ready to go to press, and that is featuring the Geologic Hazards Program and a kind of a summary article on the Magna earthquake.
Yep. Okay. Good. Okay. I'm going to transition to funding and budget. So, and Mike will talk a little bit later about the special session, but when the pandemic hit and income taxes got delayed till July, it really impacted the budget. There was a special session in June, and so we made an all-out effort, and I have to thank, I know Mark and Elissa together made an effort to contact every member of the appropriations committees. I think both the EAC, which is Executive Appropriations Committee, and the Natural Resources, to make sure they understood our need, because we are very concerned within the UGS about our sustainability in terms of staffing and deliverable of what we could do as a survey for the state, because we do a lot of good stuff. A lot of people access our data. So at risk, we are worried about, first we were asked to put up proposals of what our budget would look like if we lost 2%, 5%, or 10% of our base operating budget. On top of that, we had been appropriated for us our building blocks for fiscal year 21, which started July 1st, of a total of $800,000. But on top of all of that, mineral lease revenue really dropped. With the pandemic and the shut-in of wells and fields, the March, we're somewhere between 80,000, maybe 100, but around 80,000 probably a month. I'm just averaging here of mineral lease revenue that comes to us, because we were appropriated $1.1 million for the year. That'd be almost $100,000 a month. And the March payment was $789. And we were really worried. And Mike Vandenberg, and he can talk more about this later, but our forecasts were that for fiscal year 21, we could drop from the appropriated 1.1 million down all the way to maybe 450,000. I think Mike's upgraded that to 500,000, but that's still a huge loss. So on top of any budget cuts that the state might impose upon us, we knew we were already going to take a big hit of around 600,000, maybe more, from our available funds. And that would really have impacted how many people we could keep employed. And we worked really hard. So board members worked hard on our behalf. We talked with some legislators. We talked with the governor's office of management and budget. We talked with the guys who are the fiscal analysts for the legislature. And in the end, we were fortunate that they maintained our building blocks, and the only cut they took was about $5,000 out of our out-of-state travel budget. And so a lot of effort went into that. So our priority continues to be, how do we get secure funding for the UGS? Jodi will talk more about fiscal year 21's budget forecast and the closeout of fiscal year 20, but we think it's going to be manageable. We're now working hard on fiscal year 22. I meet with, I and Jodi and Mike, I believe, will all meet with the governor's office of management and budget tomorrow at 11 o'clock to plead our case and how do we recover from this loss of mineral lease revenue, because that'll be another big loss. We'll use most of our one-time funds, which we're going to use for maintenance. We'll probably need to use that to cover personnel and payroll for this coming year. Certainly not, we may still have some set aside. Again, Jodi will address that, how she's got it earmarked out. I don't want to misstate anything there. But we'll have some yes.
Before you move on, this is Mark. I'd just like to compliment you guys. I mean, Elissa and I made some phone calls and spent a lot of time talking to legislators about this and found, I think it's fair to say, general support for the Geological Survey and the work that you do. We have good friends in the legislature who appreciate what we do. But the heavy lifting on this was done by you and Mike and your staff. And I think maybe to some extent talking to you by Brian too. Sounded like you got some help from the DWR folks as well. And the way I look at it, you still have to worry about things in the long term, but in the short term, we totally dodged the bullet. So.
We did. You know, it was, you know, we were all working hard on this. There were a lot of late nights and long days. And I want to say Tuesday night, I think the executive committee met on a Wednesday morning, but I got a call from my boss that actually in the morning of the day before, that it looked like we might not get either one of our building blocks. That evening, I got a call from them saying, okay, there's some, you know, they said they were still working on it, and we think we're going to get you 400,000. And it wasn't until the next morning when they actually met that I knew we were going to get both of our building blocks. And I'm told that the director of the governor's office of managed budget made a midnight call to one of the legislators imploring that they maintain both of our building blocks. That's people working on our behalf. And so anyway, we appreciate everything you guys do. That was a tough couple of days. Wondering where we were going to be and what we were going to have to do. So we're looking at a lot. I'm spending a little bit of time here talking about it, but we know that mineral lease funds just are not. They're not predictable, and they can't be relied on for core funding of the UGS. Just the way I look at it. And we made an effort last year. We asked for $650,000 of ongoing funds. Or excuse me, 600 of ongoing funds and 250 of one time. That was our request. The governor's office says we'll give you 450 of ongoing and 400 of one time. So they basically gave us the same amount. They just shifted it, basically asking us to come back in a year and ask for more ongoing, which we are willing to do. But what the pandemic did is really changed the equation. So there's a lot of things that are going on here. Like I said, we think it's going to drop from 1.1 to 500. The one caveat in all of this is that we still don't know for sure how the economy is going to behave in this fiscal year. It's certainly possible in a special session, and there's another one next week, that they could reduce funds to people. Now, we're not hearing that right now, and I view that as a good thing, but that's in the back of our minds.
One thing that I learned from this process, Bill, is that I think one of the things that helped us was that in the scheme of things, our budget is so small that there's not a lot of savings that matter to the state that could be made by cutting it.
Right.
And also we've already endured previous issues where we have cut staff significantly when other people haven't. And so at this point, we can't cut more staff without doing damage. And that was easy to explain to people. But the magnitude of their problem and the smallness of our budget are helpful to us. But it seems to me that we should push forward with an effort to get the mineral lease money delivered back to the state and get a budget from the legislature that funds what they want to do. And this year the pandemic may delay all of that, I suppose, but it's also true that the mineral lease money, so when the rigs start going back up, none of those is going to be on land that's going to pay mineral lease money to the state of Utah.
That is correct. Yes. I still, production on federal lands had dropped over the last 5 years from about 1.1 million barrels a month to 500,000-ish. And I believe, and again, Mike's got the exact numbers, but I think it was 380 or 390,000 in May. So it's continuing to drop.
Yeah, and when things come back, when the drilling resumes in the Uinta Basin, it will be in a relatively well-defined area in which there's almost no federal land. And it's mostly tribal land and fee land and a little bit of Sittler land.
Federal lands are hard to get a permit anymore. That's Bill's opinion. That it's just harder because
that's
there's so much
true,
competition.
But also the most attractive resource isn't on federal lands.
Yeah, but even if there was a whole new play on federal lands, I think it would still face hurdles. I guess is my point. I could be wrong. Been wrong before, but I just see the opposition in Utah to federal stuff. Go ahead, Elissa.
I just wanted to say that I think that one of the factors that, and I want to basically acknowledge all the significant work that you and your team have worked on to get this funding, but I think it's going to be an ongoing effort to educate these legislators and representatives of the UGS story. I think this is something that's going to be a regular occurring because of the drop in the mineral lease funding, and then also basically the economy. It's going to take a while to move out of this, this troubled economy. So I just feel like this is something that it's going to be an ongoing, and I think I'm really, really grateful for how it turned out, but I think we're going to have to be on our toes.
Yeah.
Continually.
Yeah. And I think you're right. So to that end, we had to, the state has guidelines of when you make proposals for budget, what they call these building blocks. And so we submitted another one, and it basically looks just about the same as last year's, asking for about 650,000 of ongoing to be added to our budget. And that 650 is the difference between forecast mineral lease and what we are appropriated of 1.1 million. That's where we're asking for that. Now, whether we'll get there or not, I don't know. This is for fiscal year 22 or beginning July of next year. And to get our maintenance, our one-time back, we'll see. But in lieu of that, in parallel to that, had at least a couple of meetings with the Utah Petroleum Association, where Ricky Browning is the president of that group, and Brian Summers, who leads the Utah Mining Association. They have some concerns that severance taxes, which are applied to all production in the state, that it just goes to general funds mostly. There's some earmarks there, but not a lot.
Bill, severance tax is only charged against oil and gas. It's not charged against coal, and it's not charged against base and precious metals.
Yeah, but they pay some, well, there's some severance taxes paid by mining. Out of 31 million, Mike, you probably got that number, Mike Vandenberg. I want to say, God, somewhere around 10 million. Do you know that number, Mike Vandenberg? I see he's on there. I don't know if he's listening. He may just be logged in. Mike, do you know how the breakdown on severance is? I'm putting him on the spot. I'm putting him on the spot. I'm sorry, Mike.
I got it right here.
Thank you, Mike.
So total severance tax in fiscal year 2020 was $48 million. However, 14 of that goes to restricted funds and only 34 million goes to the general fund.
Right.
Of that 34 million, 23 million is oil and gas and 11 million is mining.
Yeah, so I don't know what it's on, Mark.
It's got to be base and precious because there is no severance tax on coal.
Yeah.
Correct. There's no severance tax on coal, but all other mining there is a severance.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right. That was what I believed for a while too. And so my point is we're digging into it. And we had a meet. Go ahead.
A large portion of that 11 million is Kennecott.
Yeah, it's got to be. So the point is that the petroleum and mine associations feel that there ought to be some earmark to push some of this money directly to Division of Oil and Gas into UGS. Now, that will take legislative effort to make that happen. And the point is that there's some support there, that if we decide or try and go down this route, we wouldn't be blazing the path by ourselves. But I don't know if that'll happen this year or not.
Well, and keep in mind that that Dogum already has their own special tax, the conservation fee.
Yeah, they have the conservation fee, but they're still going to have a pretty good shortfall this year.
They are.
But I just think there's a perception out there amongst the associations that they're spending all this money and they want to make sure that the agencies that they rely on are able to function and do their job.
Good.
So anyway, just something we've talked about. We've had some internal proposals that we apply something to something like aggregates or something, a really small number that, would be earmarked towards us. But trying to get a new tax in this climate, that's really tough. That is a tough row to hoe.
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
This is Mike again. I just want to make one quick point on the severance tax. Severance tax, just like mineral lease, fluctuates wildly with commodity prices because it's based on the value of what's produced.
Yep.
And so whether or not we decide to go down this road, it will not get us off the train of unpredictable budget.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it does give us a broader base to draw on than federal mineral lease. So
I would sure rather see us try and get the industry people that are interested in this on board with an approach to the legislature that has them providing us with a fundamental base budget every year from the general fund that allows you folks to sleep at night.
yeah,
I agree with Mike 100%. The severance tax is on a sliding scale, has to do with price to begin with, the two different rates depending on what the price of oil is. And as he pointed out, it's a number in which one of the factors is what people received for their oil. And so when mineral lease money is down, so is severance tax.
Yeah.
So you're not achieving the objective that you really need to pursue, in my opinion, which is to get recognized for the work you do and have the money show up routinely from the legislature. I mean, you're still going to have to fight for it, but that should be where it comes from, not from some variable amount that we know is going to be up and down all the time.
Right. And I agree with you guys. You know, I've turned a corner on this one a little bit. And to that point, we're asking. Difficult time to ask, but as I told my boss, Brian Steed, I said, I have to ask, you know, because, you know, some people were saying, well, maybe this is not the year to ask. If not now, when? You know, we're gonna need it next year. So anyway, just my opinion. You guys still there? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Sound like I lost people.
We're here.
Okay, good. Sorry. So anyway, you know, my point is we're looking for ideas. If you've got other ones, better ones, we are happy to listen. Collective, as Mike Hylland said, sometimes there's value in the collective wisdom. And so if we can learn more about it, I just want you to know that we're thinking about it. We're working on it. Our immediate solution is we're going to the legislature to ask them for ongoing funds. So Jodi, can I turn it over to you now? Thank you, Mike.
Good morning. First, I'll touch on the fiscal year 20 closeout. You see these links will work here for me. Oh, I can't click on them. You got to click on them, Bill.
I can click on it. You want me to open this up?
Yes, please.
I can do that. There you go. Does this look right?
Sure.
You tell me where you want me to be and I'll go.
Okay. Yeah, that works great. So this is just a summary of how our funding came in. So our fixed state funding, which is made up of our general funds, was about 4.4 million. And then the 1 million, in addition to the 1 million for the salt flats. And then we had 600,000 carryover from fiscal year 19, and a small amount, about 14,000 for the land distribution account, exchange distribution account. And then outside revenue, so it's about 7.1 million in what we call fixed state funding. Our outside revenue is made up of federal funds, dedicated credit, and transfer funds. You may not have been familiar with transfer funds. I've reallocated I took another look at our revenue funding and worked with state finance, and some of our funding, actually quite a bit of it, you can see here over 700,000 is funds that we get from other state agencies or other DNR divisions. So those could actually be classified as transfer revenue rather than dedicated credit, as how it was in the past. And so that's kind of a new type of revenue to us. I mean, it's not new, but it's a new classification that we've not used in the past. But so in collective funds, that's about 1.8 million of outside funding from, grant projects. That's about where we've been for several years. That's a good figure. So our total revenue was 8.9 million, almost 9 million, but remember, $1 million of that is Bonneville Salt Flats. Our expenditures for the year were a little over 7.8 million. So that left us with an unexpended balance of 1,137,000. Of that, 1 million was the Bonneville Salt Flats, that we had to non-lapse. And then we had non-lapse authority for 200,000, but during the one of the special sessions for the COVID relief, what they did is they had us estimate how much of our non-lapse authority we might be able to give up in fiscal year 20 and have them reappropriate it to us in fiscal year 21. And at that time, I estimated maybe 150,000. So they actually cut that out of fiscal year 20, but gave it back to us in fiscal year 21. And so that left me with 50,000 to non-lapse. So unfortunately, we had to lapse about $87,000. That was kind of a surprise, and due to a couple minor things, a minor thing and a larger thing. The minor thing, we did bring in a little bit extra grant revenue, not a whole lot, maybe 20,000 or so that came in that last month or two that I couldn't have forecasted at the time I did the non-lapse authority. But also, Bill touched on the mineral lease check in March. That was only about $881.
Sorry, I got the amount wrong.
It was $881 that came in March. So we weren't expecting to get that back. I mean, it's normally around 80,000 or so. And so we weren't expecting to recover that. But in June, actually, for the June payment, which I got in late July, we got that back. Our June payment was 124,000. So to our surprise, we got the basically the March mineral lease back. And at that point, it's too late for us to spend it, to do anything. So unfortunately, we had to lapse that. Expenditures by program, you can see those there, and also expenditures by category. No real surprises there. Our personnel expenditures are still around 87%. And I think if you want to go to the annual report chart tab, it'll show, the revenue and percentages there. So now we're about, for what we used, 71% general fund, and you can see the rest there. So that was fiscal year 20 closeout. Any questions? Okay. So then going forward, if you saw
Sorry, I lost you. My bad.
Oh. Okay, just go forward another. There you go. Okay. Yeah, our fiscal year 21 actually looks all right at the moment. Looks pretty strong at the moment.
I put in italics for you.
Yeah, thanks. As Bill mentioned, we do anticipate $500,000 reduction in mineral lease from what was appropriated. Do you want to open the chart for me, please?
You bet.
Okay, and then if you want to scroll down, you can see the makeup of our state funding. So you'll note there, our general fund is the 4.9,066,700. So that does include our ongoing 400,000, and then this also includes our 400,000 one time. And then you can see that 150,000 that was cut during the special session that was cut from fiscal year 20 and moved into fiscal year 21. So our general fund, when you look at trend charts, it will look quite a bit higher than you'll see this little upward trend, but that is why there's nearly $1 million there of some carryover and one-time funding and new funding. But The other thing I want to draw your attention to, if you go back up, Bill, thank you. Our outside funding highlighted there in orange or tan, whatever that color is. We normally operate about 1.8 million, and that's what we have appropriated. But man, I don't know, we got all kinds of funding this year. A big hit in mapping that was discussed. And I think some of the programs later are going to talk about all their extra funds. We've had forage again, the purple ones, groundwater again. So a lot of funding. So this is pretty high for us. 2.6 million of outside funding. Like I mentioned, and Bill mentioned, all hands on deck this year. We're going to be working hard. And I was just looking, I was putting together a revenue tracking sheet, and I counted probably 7 or 8 of these projects that cross over multiple programs. So we have 3 to 4 of our program, more programs working on a project. So our whole department, like even Mike Hylland mentioned, editorial and GIO are involved in a lot of projects. So we got a lot of staff busy this year. Not sure how we'll do. We'll do our best. It's going to be tough, but like I said, we usually operate about 1.8. We have seen some years at 2 or 2.2. So we'll just have to see if we can get it all done. I kind of have a placeholder there that if we don't, we have about 400,000 that if our outside revenue goes down, we still have state funds to cover that. I also have a placeholder in here that I carved out about 250,000 in expenditures for, I just plugged it in admin right now. So it's part of the expenditures in admin. This is a placeholder for our equipment and maintenance that has been delayed. That was our original proposal, was 250,000. And when I got doing this budget, as you can see, with all the extra outside funding and the new 800,000 of general funds, although 400 is one time, we had quite a bit of funding. I was able to still put about 250 aside. We'll see how the year goes, maybe mid-year, see how the session goes, see if we survive further cuts, see how our outside funding's coming in. And then if we could possibly, start chipping down that list and maybe get, take care of a few of those maintenance and equipment items, that would be great. I think that's about all. Any questions?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jodi. Appreciate it. And then this would be Mike. We covered a lot of this already, but do you have any comments, Mike Hylland?
No, I was going to say, yeah, Bill gave a nice summary. It works for me. I guess I would just echo that, we just appreciate the support that we get from you all, the board, and the efforts that you put towards helping us be successful in preserving that building block funding. But DNR administration as well, they really had our back when we went through the exercise of coming up with the 2 and 5 and 10% cuts. That was for the department, and so what they included for cuts for the UGS was just that $5,000 of outside travel budget. And then Bill mentioned the late night calls from the governor's office on our behalf. So we have a lot of people that we are in deep appreciation of.
Yep. Okay. I think that takes us to our break. Is that right? Man, we're
Yeah.
right on schedule. Okay. So shall we take a break and come back in 15 minutes?
Sounds good. It's 10 o'clock. We'll reconvene at 10:15.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. 10:16, Bill, should we go ahead and reconvene the meeting?
You bet. Go ahead.
All right. Looks like we get to hear about all of the grant updates, and turn it back over to you, Bill, and looking forward to hearing about that.
Okay. And I'm going to turn it over to, I think Mike Vandenberg is up first.
Yes, Bill, can you stop presenting so I can start?
I can do that. Let's see if I can find. Okay, where's the button? There it is. Stop sharing. How's that?
Perfect.
So I'm just going to turn. It's all you, Mike.
Everybody looking at the first slide of a PowerPoint? Cool. Okay. So good morning. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to update everybody on the Energy and Minerals program. This screenshot, I took this with my cell phone. This was our last, we hold quarterly meetings in Energy and Minerals with everybody, and this was our last one about a month or so ago, and I'm sure everybody can relate to the Zoom meetings like we're on now, or Google Meet. But it is fun to get everybody together. Everybody, you know, brings their dog in for a little show and tell. They don't have a dog, their child. But we've been staying well connected through this time, even though pretty much everybody is working at home in my group. A couple people come in the office 1 or 2 days a week. And the Core Center guys are out at the Core Center. But let's jump in. So I want to start with an overview of our grant funding for fiscal year 51. So this is a big list of all the outside funding that the Energy and Minerals program is bringing in fiscal year 21. Some of these projects are just one fiscal year. Others are multiple years. And I'll talk about a couple of those multi-year projects here soon. That first column is the total outside funding. The second column is the cost share that we're responsible for. So you really got to add those two together. And that's our grant obligation. And then that third column is pass-through. We have 2 grants that have pass-through contribution. And then the graph that I put together there, that really kind of tells the whole story. So you'll see on the blue line, Energy and Minerals staff from fiscal year 13 to this current year, going from 18 down to 11. We're currently at 11. And you'll see the outside funding per person. So when we were at 18 people, and back in what we've been calling the salad days, we were bringing in a significant amount of money before that the price of oil crashed in 2015. You can see all these drops are related to that price of oil crash. But then you look at this, what happened in fiscal year 21, and this is what keeps me up at night. So we're nearly back up to the level of outside funding that we had pre-oil crash. However, we have 7 fewer people to deal with that amount of money. And so that presents, on one side, you know, it's a double-edged sword. It's nice to have that outside funding, but it presents a huge challenge for our group because Bill is not going to let me hire 7 more people to spend that money. So we are all going to be very busy, and you're going to hear similar stories from mapping, and you're going to hear similar stories from Hugh and Groundwater. We're all going to be extremely busy this year working on grant-funded projects. So that means a lot of our non-grant funded activities, which there are quite a few, those are going to get pushed aside for the year. You know, I said a lot of these some of these grants are multi-year projects, and so some of this money could slip into fiscal year 22, and we might have to do that. And of course, we'll have to communicate that with Jodi along the way, and decide how much of that money we're going to let slip into fiscal year 22 versus how much we're going to try and spend this year. So I guess that, in a nutshell, is our program's biggest challenge for the year, is spending down this grant funds and meeting those grant obligations. I just want to highlight a few of the newer grants that we've pulled in since the last board meeting. And most of these are multi-year grants, which is great because we talked about the fiscal year 22 budget, and there's a lot of question marks there. And so a lot of this outside funding will go into fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. So that will help quite a bit. The first one being the Gold Hill mapping project is tied to critical minerals. This was written by Stephanie Mills with help from Andrew. This is a USGS grant, $120,000 for 2 years. Andrew Ruppke wrote a grant to the BLM to do kind of, it's a continuation of work he has been doing the last couple of years on mineral evaluations and getting data out on our website. So that's about $125,000 for 3 years. Elliot, Jagnecki, and Andrew wrote a continuation grant for their North Arm salt crust work. This was funded by the Forestry Fire State Lands. So they did similar work last fiscal year, and Forestry Fire State Lands were so impressed that they funded them for continuing that work for an additional year. So that's about $30,000 again. That one's just fiscal year 21. Ryan Gull, with help from myself, we have petitioned SITLA, and they have agreed to give us $100,000 for 2 years of petroleum-related work. So for a long time, SITLA has given our group money to work on the mineral side, and just more recently, they have been more amenable to giving us some research funds to work on the oil and gas side, which is great. Ryan Gull just finished a really fantastic Mancos B project. He's going to do a little bit more Mancos B work this fiscal year, but the big push this year will be a Green River Formation project, working on some of the new core donations that we got and working with Finley.
What is Mancos B?
It's the Prairie Canyon member of the Upper Mancos. It's a siliciclastic zone, so it is not a resource play, but companies are looking at trying to drill horizontals as opposed to going after it vertically. Then
Thanks.
Christian, sorry, go ahead.
I just said thank you.
Okay. Christian Hardwick was extremely busy this spring writing several geothermal proposals. He didn't write the bulk of them. We're not the PIs on any of these, but he supplied all the information to the PIs. And there were 3 of them. 2 of them were in competition with each other. So the last one on this list, the DOE geothermal with University of Nevada, Reno, that one was in competition with another proposal that was written by EGI, but the Nevada Reno project was funded and the EGI project was not. And I think Bill mentioned this one. We're looking at geothermal resources in Western Utah and Eastern Nevada. It's a big interstate collaboration. That's why I think this one was the one that got funded. This was also, Stephen Kirby in the water group was also integral in this, getting this proposal submitted. So that's $365,000 for 3 years. And then Christian was also approached by Sandia on a completely separate DOE geothermal solicitation. And this one was also funded for $150,000 for 2 years. And that's just the UGS portion. The Nevada Reno project is actually a $10 million plus project that will go 3 to 5 years. And there is a chance that UGS could get more money in years 4 and 5. Bill mentioned most of these already, so these are just some of the new publications that came out in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 20, the critical minerals report, which if you haven't looked at that, I highly suggest you take a look. It's really fantastic. I think it's going to be the go-to report for anything critical minerals for the state of Utah for many years. Helium report, helium is fairly big right now. A lot of people are looking at helium in the Paradox Basin and around the San Rafael Swell. Of course, Utah's Energy Landscapes, the 5th edition came out, and we have funding to do a 6th edition that will come out before the next legislative session. And that one will focus a little bit more on COVID-related impacts. And then Andrew's group finished a multi-year project for the John D. Dingle Land Exchange. So they did all the mineral evaluations for the Sitla lands and the BLM lands involved in that land exchange. So that was a huge project that was finished just last month. Then Bill already mentioned the multiple core donations. So with downturns, companies look to save money. And the easiest way for them to save money is to stop paying to store their core. So they want to donate it to us. So over the course of May and June, we just got truck after truck of donations. And I think that picture of Peter kind of tells the whole story is every day it seemed like we were getting pallets and pallets, and it really kind of wore those guys out as they were also trying to finish a huge redleaf project. And so we just stashed everything down the aisles and until the redleaf project was finished, and now they're just starting to go through it, put it on shelves, get it in the inventory. We have more cores coming. So I was contacted by Anadarko. They're going to give us some of their cores. We're going to get some phosphate cores from north of Bernal. So it continues. And just this morning, I got another email. Engineering firm wants to give us a bunch of shallow bedrock cores from various engineering projects around the state. So yeah, it's just crazy. And of course, this creates the longer term problem of core storage. So I think everybody knows that our building is pretty much full, and we're relying more and more on Clearfield. And of course, I would love to build a new building just to the north of our current building, but it's hard to convince other people in DNR that that's an important use of that space. We'll continue trying to solve this problem. And of course, everybody knows now Tom Chidsey's retiring at the end of September. These couple photos, one of them may or may not be photoshopped. These are from a trip that Tom and I took to the Geological Society of London to a microbial conference, which was again during the salad days, which was a lot of fun. And so I've been thinking a lot about his replacement, of course. And I think we're going to try to advertise for a senior level petroleum position. Maybe get the solicitation for the job announcement out in early September, keep it out for a month. The one good thing about the timing is there's quite a few petroleum geologists looking for a good, stable job, even if it comes with less pay. So we have a good chance of attracting somebody really talented to replace Tom. Of course, there's absolutely no way to replace Tom, but I have, at being program manager for 3 years, I've had to replace a handful of veterans now, and I'll tell you, the people that we have brought in have really brought in new energy and new talents to UGS, and I'm very excited about the future of UGS with all these new talented people that we have been able to bring in.
Hey, Mike, can I make a comment about that?
Yeah.
So the folks that you're talking about who have had long careers doing fabulous work at the Utah Geological Survey were hired after the last downturn that was comparable to this one in 1986.
Exactly.
And this is a chance to do that again.
Exactly. Yes. That's my hope. I wanted to give, this is going to be really brief because I'm already running out of time. I wanted to give a quick update on one of our larger projects, the DOE King Creek project. However, there's some things in flux with this project at the moment, which I can't announce in a public meeting, unfortunately. If somebody wants to talk offline, feel free to drop me a line. Just to remind everybody, of course, the King Creek play is in the northern Paradox Basin, accessed by horizontal drilling. Most of the production is from the King Creek unit, which is here just north of Canyonlands. But we want to try to expand the play to the north and further to the south. This is a huge collaboration. This is a $10 million project with EGI and several other groups. We had originally thought of, so the original plan was to drill a well with an industry partner. However, none of our industry partners were able to do that, so we were faced with drilling our own stratigraphic well per the requirements of the grant. We originally focused in on this Flatiron site to the south because it was a shallow site and it would be cheaper to drill. We were going through the process of setting up the drilling program for this when COVID hit. We decided to put everything on hold this spring as we thought that a lot of the drilling bids that we received in March, we could probably get better deals in the summer. So we put everything back out to bid, but we did it for 3 separate sites because all along, we really want to drill up here to the north. We think the King Creek is much more prospective to the north, but that was out of our budget last winter. But we thought maybe with decreasing prices for drilling that we might be able to afford one of those northern sites. So we put everything back out to bid for 3 different sites, 10 Mile, and this is the GBU, Gunnison Valley unit. The Gunnison Valley unit obviously is the deepest and would have been the most expensive. I did go out and visit the sites just to make sure that they were suitable for drilling. These couple photos of where a drill pad could be located. You can see that flat land, easily accessible. And as I said, the GBU is, if we have the funds, would be the preferred site to drill. It's the least controversial site as it's further north. It's in Mancos country. It's close to the highway, close to the town of Green River and away from Moab. We kind of settled on a site that was near a previous well, the State 1642. And just a quick Hinsey stratigraphic column just to show, we'd be drilling through pretty much all the Mesozoic section, Permian section, get down to the King Creek. And that is where I need to leave it at this point. And hopefully by the next board meeting, I'll have some more exciting news for everybody. But so I apologize for that. I know I'm pretty much out of time. I do have some slides related to COVID's impacts on Utah's energy industry, and I won't
Mike,
go
go
through
ahead. Mike, go ahead and
Yes.
show them. Go ahead and show them.
Okay. So these are similar to an article I wrote for Survey Notes, which will be coming out in September. But just real quickly, the dotted red line is Utah's crude oil production, and that's in 1,000 barrels per day. The blue line is WTI crude oil price, so that's the U.S. benchmark. And the green line is the Uinta Basin wax price, which of course is discounted to WTI. The black line with the points is Utah's rig count. So this goes from January 2014 to present. You can see the price decline that we saw in April. Then we had a subsequent rebound in May and June and July. WTI is back up to $40, over $40 now, but the Uinta Basin wax price is still below 30. And then the big news here is the production. So of course, when we see declines in price, we're going to see a corresponding decline in production. This steep drop is real data, it's actual data. So we have production data now through May of 2020. Production basically dropped from March 2022 to May 2022, 27%. So that's from 93,000 barrels per day down to about 68,000 barrels per day. And we fully expect that it will continue to drop because we have 0 rigs running right now. It will not drop that steeply. The rate of drop will soften, but it will continue to drop into the fall, and we could reach 55,000 barrels per day by this fall. That basically translates to a total for 2020, total production of 25 million barrels, and that's a significant decline from 2019 total production of 36.9. Just to show kind of the other side of the equation. So this is the demand side. So this is refinery data from PAD 4. So this is weekly data. PAD 4 includes Utah and a couple other northern Rocky Mountain states. But you'll see the COVID-related declines here in each of these graphs. The dotted line is a 3-year pre-COVID average. So the top red line is motor gasoline production. We saw a 43% decline in late April, but essentially has rebounded back to normal levels now. So that's good news for the petroleum industry. We don't know how that's going to translate to production in Utah, but at least on the demand side, that's good news. Diesel production, you'll see, it went down a little bit, but it was not severely impacted because commercial trucking never really stopped. Jet fuel production had the steepest decline, 84%, and it has yet to recover just because I think everybody's aware commercial flights are still not where they were pre-COVID. And the last graph is just the refinery utilization rate. We saw a 30% decline, so from about 90% down to 65% or so, and that has also rebounded back to kind of normal levels, about 90%. So on the demand side, things are looking good, are looking okay. Now we just need to wait for the production in Utah to kind of match the demand. This is actually electricity sales, sorry. So this is electricity sales in Utah by sector. So the gray shaded area is the range of the previous 5 years. The gray single line is the average of the last 5 years. And you'll see the colored lines are the 2020 data. And so in April and May, as I think everybody could expect, the residential use of electricity went up in May 21%. And that's because everybody got sent home and everybody's sitting at home working as opposed to sitting in the commercial building working. Correspond with that, commercial electricity usage, of course, went down 11%. Industrial usage didn't really change that much because most industrial users continued to operate during COVID. I think in the next month or two, so this data is through May, I think in the next month or two, we'll see these curves go back into the 5-year averages. So how does this affect the UGS? Of course, and Bill touched on this. So we have these big drops here in Utah's crude oil production. So the green line is total production. The orange line is production on tribal, state, and private lands. And then the blue line is production on federal lands. So the thing to note here is this continued drop in production on federal lands, as Mark already discussed. You can also see that in the percent production on federal lands. We were up at 50% last month, or in May of this year. We dropped down to 17.4%. That's the lowest it's ever been. So that's very concerning for mineral lease. You can see this map here, as Mark already said, the sweet spot in the basin where people are going to drill. There's no federal lands there. Federal lands are the yellow. And so all new drilling is going to take place on private and tribal lands. So that this problem of declining federal oil production is not going to go away. So what does that mean for UGS? Well, this line is going to continue to go down because of that. And that's why we really need to find a different way to stabilize the UGS budget. So that's all my slides. I apologize, everybody, for going over. I can take some questions if people have questions, or we can move on to, I think, Hugh is next.
Mike, can you forward those to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
This is Pete. A real quick question about the lack of ability to move on federal lands. Is that related to NEPA or land use planning, or what is it?
It is 100% geology, actually.
100%?
Pretty much. Right now, it's all driven by geology. So the sweet spot, where you could drill a well that has the best economics and will produce the most oil, are within that dashed red line on the map. And you'll see there's no federal lands in there. And that's where pretty much all companies are going to be looking to drill wells, because those are going to be the most economic wells you can drill right now. Anything else?
And by most economic, you also mean competitive with other shale plays around the country in the Permian Basin and the Niobrara and the
Yes. So these are going to be all horizontal wells, 11,000-foot laterals, and they are as good, if not better, than most of the wells in the Permian Basin and the Bakken, all the shale plays you hear about outside of the state. The big difference in Utah is the area of the sweet spot is tiny compared to, say, Texas or.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Let's go. And Elissa, help me here. See, I think I'm on. Yeah.
Yep, you're on.
So we're okay if we go over a little bit, right? Because usually we go to like 11:30.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good enough.
Yes.
So Grant, I have you up next. Do you want to run the slides from your end? Do you want me to run them from my end?
I'll see if I can get them to present.
Okay. I'm ready to go if you don't.
All right, can you see that okay?
It's coming. There you are.
Okay. See if we can get it to, I'm not sure I'll be able to, when I maximize it on my screen, I'm not sure I'll be able to advance. Let's see. So yeah, Bill asked me to just give an overview of all of this extra money, what it means, where it's coming from, and how it's going to be used. So this is just an overview of grants from mapping and paleontology. Let's do paleontology first, just because it's small and we can talk about it quickly. Paleontology is a small program, 3 people. It's really a sub-program, but it's part of mapping, but I view them as 2 separate programs. They managed to secure 2 grants this year, one from the National Park Service, and this will be to do a paleontology inventory, the Triassic, basically the Moenkopi-Chinle interval, just above the White Rim Trail in the northern part of Canyonlands National Park. It was kind of funny. the Park Service, maybe many of you have heard Vince Santucci's name. He was pushing us to do the whole Canyonlands National Park, and as you know, it's huge. And so we had to get him to see reality, and just this small area, relatively small area, still a huge area north of the White Rim Trail is what they'll be doing there. 50-50 match, and that'll incorporate a couple of weeks of field work. Then we got a grant from the BLM to do actually kind of a similar thing. This is that large, kind of a triangle east of Capitol Reef National, or sorry, Arches National Park, north of the Colorado River, kind of running over towards towards the Dolores River where it comes in. And this area has a lot of roads in it. It's kind of an off-road sacrifice area. And we really don't have a good handle on what paleontological resources are in here, other than some of these equivalent formations have a lot of resources in another area. It's mainly Kayenta Formation that we'll be looking at in there, but we'll look at the whole interval that's in that area. So anyway, it's good in a tight year. It provides then some field money and meets the goals that the UGS has for paleontology. Now, state map and the mapping program. You've heard me talk before, those of you who've been around a few years. State map has been our go-to funding source for 25 years. And it's been very important to the state of Utah. We've gotten a lot of good work done through that money, but it's been on this great, big, long decline. I don't know, can you see my mouse when I do this?
I'm not seeing it.
Oh, you're not seeing my mouse? Okay, I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You can see the decline.
Grant, we can't see the dates on the bottom either.
Oh,
You move it up?
is that better?
Nope.
Nope.
No, really. Well, let me. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I did ran the slideshow, which fills my entire screen, but evidently it cuts the edges off for you. So if you can see that, we'll just do it this way then. So anyway, we've been down to an averaging around $155,000 to $165,000 of grant money every year. So here we go. FY21, we received $158,000 and change, just like we have the last few years. But the USGS, through several years of lobbying, managed to secure a new infusion of money into the state map program. And it was really, the effort really, credit for that goes to the AASG, the Association of State Geologists. And they lobbied very hard. And one of the big arguments, as you well know, were critical minerals. So in a way, the background reasoning is critical minerals. Bottom line is they got about $5 million extra into state map. It came in very late. It was after we put in our basic proposal. And so they put out a call for a supplemental proposal. And fortunately for Utah, we were one of the few states that was able to jump that fast and come up with the match. The match is the critical thing. So we got an extra $299,919. And of course, these are all 50-50 match. And you can see it just throws us right off of the chart. Total state map funding then, $458,000 and change. And so a tremendous amount of work. And obviously in a fiscal year like the one we're entering, this was very important. I should mention that when this opportunity came about, Bill, Mike, Jodi, and I mainly, and a few others as well, but we had a good heart-to-heart discussion about do we apply for the full amount? The amount allowed to apply for was $300,000. And we decided we needed to go for it, and we would figure out how to get the work done somehow. So we put in the proposal and we got it fully funded. And like I say, we don't expect this to continue. We hope, and this supplemental funding should continue. It should be an ongoing thing for our state map, but we really don't realistically think we'll get this much next year, because other states will quickly gear up. They will find matches, and there will be a lot more competition in coming years. But you know, that's just a huge amount of money in a year. But it's just like Mike said, it keeps me awake at night wondering how we're going to spend it. Well, it gets worse. Part of that that's overall funding that went through to the USGS. One pot of money went to the National Geologic Mapping Database Program. It's a program, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a minute, but it's run by the USGS, and they had a bunch of money that they got at the last minute, and we're scrambling to figure out how to use. So they threw it out to the states, and we were allowed to even put in one more proposal. So we scrambled once again to write another proposal, and it was fully funded. And so, I mean, you can see, you know, we're off the charts here. $550,000 of money, nearly all of it is a 50-50 match. The cooperative agreement is not, it's 100% funded. So over $1 million worth of work that's got to be completed. And I mean, our whole mapping program budget isn't even that much. So needless to say, we're involving a lot of other programs. Fortunately, Mike Hylland and GIO has stepped up big time. They will be a big part of this. But Hazards and Steve Bowman and the Hazards group are big contributors. And even as busy as Mike Vanden and the energy and mineral guys are, we managed to finagle a little bit of their time to work on this as well. Anyway, it just blows my mind. Like I say, I can't even fathom how we're going to get all of this work done. But as you've seen from all the budget, we need this money. And here's an important statement. These are to do things that have value to the state. And we would not be going after this money just to get the money. We've got to be convinced that it really adds value to the state of Utah, partly because it is a 50-50 match. Okay, so just very quickly what this really is. So again, state map basic, 158K, 50-50 match. Most of that will go to this project I think you're aware of. We've been doing really focused 7.5-minute quad detailed geologic mapping in the Wasatch growth years. I'll show you a couple of maps at the end of the presentation here. So we're proposing 3 more 7.5-minute quadrangles within this area. And I think you recognize those: Payson Lakes down by Santaquin, Mountain Dell just east of Salt Lake up in the hills, and Paradise up in the south end of Cache Valley. And also to continue our 3060 mapping. And this time it'll be the southwest corner of the Promontory Point 3060 quadrangle. There's a reason why we jumped over to there. I could explain later if you want to know. But the supplemental, like I say, it's a new pot of money, and it has new goals and new objectives. It was the way it was written up. There were 7 tasks that we could focus on, and we broke our proposal up and are doing something on nearly all of those 7 tasks. The cooperative agreement, again, 100% funded. We have 4 different tasks. So let me jump to the supplemental. And it's a big, long document, but to boil it down to the very essence, there are really 4 main goals. 3D mapping. A lot of states, a lot of provinces in Canada are really big on 3D mapping, and this is just the future. And really, I mean, it's what you think it is. It's drill hole data and seismic data but it's integrating it into your geologic mapping so it can be viewed and manipulated and used as a more or less as a single map unit. Seamless, borderless, this drives the national people, the big picture people crazy that they look at 2 of our 3060s and there's different names, there's different contacts, faults don't match up, and they don't really understand, map users don't understand why that is. And there's a big push to resolve that. It's not an easy thing. And again, I could spend an hour talking about the seamless problems by themselves. But basically, as I said in a national talk I gave a year ago back in Minnesota, our #1 rule is we don't decrease the quality of new maps in order to match older maps. But if you have that rule as a fundamental rule, then you've got a problem, because what are you going to do when you don't match up with the older maps? And so, you know, we're attacking that problem. It'll take many years to address, and a lot of remapping of older quadrangles, but it's an important national goal. They want a uniform national database. And what that really comes down to is GEMS. GEMS stands for Geologic Map Schema. It's a national set of standards, format, and content. We just hired Rosemary Faslin. We stole her out of the GIO program, and she is going to be our GEMS expert moving forward. And she will be for the whole survey. She will be doing training and helping all the programs who are going to have to meet these new standards. Some of the major tasks that we're going after, improve, again, they're different. They want to improve the national database. They want to implement this GEMS training and help every state build infrastructure. Again, the seamless 3060s, they decided they wanted to start big and work small. So they wanted to start on the national or on the state maps, the 1 to 500K in Utah's case, that the Hensey map you're all familiar with. And so we have projects in this supplemental for all of these. Edge match, we're going to start by edge matching against Wyoming and Colorado up in the Uinta Basin mountain area. And we're going to work on future plans and goals. Then this national database, again, it's a USGS-led program. Because this is 100% federally funded, basically, we are just on contract to do what they want us to do. Fortunately, what they want us to do benefits Utah. So it's basically getting free money to do things that benefit Utah. We're going to be working on converting 7.5-minute quads into GEMS format. I think these are going to be around the state, a couple from the Wasatch, a couple from Cedar City, a couple from the St. George area. Address stratigraphic nomenclature issues, build on that 3D database I mentioned. And Steve Bowman's actually going to be on a national team working on a national geochronology database. Okay, so just to wrap up, this are a couple of slides, this slightly dated, but just wanted you to see mainly from just state map basic, this is the progress we've made over, this is just an example. I picked 2003 at random, but we're getting close to having some kind of coverage, not always as good as we want it to be for the entire state in the 3060s. I'll skip that one. I know we're about out of time. 7.5-minute quads. Most of our focus has been in two areas, the Wasatch, greater Wasatch area and the Southwest area, but also a fair amount in the Richfield area and in the Moab area. And, again, we can talk about reasons. I think it's pretty obvious why we're focusing on those areas. The Wasatch area, we've been really emphasizing Wasatch for about 5 or 6 years now. And these boxed quadrangles are the ones where we've done proposed or completed improvements. And I think I'll just exit the PowerPoint at this point. And
thank you, Grant.
yes.
Any questions for Grant?
congratulations on all that funding, and good luck getting all of that done. That's awesome, though. I mean, that's a good problem to have.
It is a good problem, especially in a year like this. I mean, as you know, it's saving our hides, but yeah, everybody's got to work those hides off to get this work done this year, and there will be some slop over into the next fiscal year as well with these projects. So we know that already.
Yeah. This is just awesome in terms both of the funding for the survey at a time when we need it and getting value for it. The things that we would be having to budget for down the road anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, my comment is when it comes to budgets, you never get the amount you want. So if they lose sleep over having too much, that beats us. That beats not having enough by a lot.
Yeah.
This is Pete. I don't want to start a discussion, just to remind people that I'm the representative from the board on the State Map Advisory Committee, and you're going to need a new one next year.
Yeah, we're crying already over that one.
We are sad that this is going to be your last year, Pete. So we're going to work you hard.
That's okay.
Yeah, we were actually talking about this yesterday, Pete. So if your ears are burning, we were talking about you. So okay, I'll turn it over to Hugh then. Hugh, I do have your current version in case we need to go there, but you want to try and run it on your own?
Yeah, I've been updating as the others have been talking.
That's all right. I just wanted to let you know that I did get your email and I have it ready if you need it.
So
Hugh Hurlow.
Hi. Yeah, I thought this was going to be a quick hit situation, not a program overview. So I'm just going to focus mostly on one project.
That's fine.
I did a little adding in the end. So let me go to if I can.
I think some people just want to promote.
Not me. Okay, can you see that slide? 7 Mile Canyon monitoring well.
Let's see.
Just shows don't know what I'm doing.
Maybe you're not presenting.
Well,
should be down in the.
There we are.
Present now.
Got it. I always forget the second step.
Okay, you got to choose the window or the frame.
Correct. Okay, now what? Now what have we got?
Okay, I can see it now.
All right, are we good? So what I hoped was we could do a Weather Channel style live action shot from the drilling site down at 7 Mile Canyon with Lucy Jordan being inundated with groundwater as they hit the aquifer. But it turns out they are en route now. They're probably just arriving. So I just wanted to focus on the current project of our 7 Mile Canyon groundwater monitoring well. This was designed by Stephen Kirby, who's the overall project manager, and Lucy is the on-site well geologist. So this is in the northwest part of, or just adjacent to the northwest part of Arches National Park, where we have important springs that come into 7 Mile Canyon and Courthouse Wash. At the same time, there's a lot of pressure for groundwater development just to the north and northwest of those springs and above them in terms of hydrologic gradient or hydraulic gradient. And based in large part on our work during the early 2000s, the Division of Water Rights set up a special groundwater protection zone to address those springs. And the current well is funded by National Park Service and being drilled by the U.S. Geological Survey team, who we've worked with quite a bit over the years. All right, if you can see my mouse, the orange line is Highway 191. as it heads down toward Moab and crosses the Colorado River near the bottom of the slide. The yellow lines are various recreational roads. You can see the road going into Arches. I couldn't get a coverage of the Arches protection zone out of water rights, so I've kind of shown it as this big oval in blue. And then the area of intense pressure for groundwater development is right along the highway. And within that, Arches protection zone. Regional groundwater flow is southeast toward the Colorado River, but in higher stratigraphic zones, there's a more local flow system that flows toward 7 Mile Canyon. And it's that flow system that feeds the springs that feed perennial flow in Courthouse Wash. Okay, this is the stratigraphy in the area. The two green units, the Moab member of the Curtis Formation and the Slick Rock member of the Entrada Sandstone, both Jurassic, comprise what are referred to as the Slick Rock Aquifer in the area. Though that aquifer Slick Rock Aquifer. That aquifer supplies the springs that in turn support the perennial flow in 7 Mile Canyon and Courthouse Wash. Below those is the Dewey Bridge member of the Carmel Formation, which is predominantly fine grained and acts as a confining zone between the Slick Rock Aquifer and the Glen Canyon Group Aquifer below it. At the top of the Glen Canyon Group Aquifer is the Navajo Sandstone. So the Aquifer Protection Zone is specific to the Entrada Aquifer. It basically says you can't develop groundwater out of that aquifer because it supplies the springs. However, groundwater development in the underlying Glen Canyon Group is permitted. Those of you that are familiar with the Jurassic stratigraphy in the area know that these are all petrographically very similar units, except for the Dewey Bridge. So it's very important when you're drilling a well to understand where you are in the section. And we have had some trouble with that in past wells near the Moab Fault, where we have faults and a tendency to miss cuttings. So it makes it very ambiguous. This is a generalized cross section by an now obscure geologist from west to east. It shows the location of our previous well at Courthouse Wash Boundary Spring. And then the current well will be more or less in the upper part of this arch. But you can see again in cross section the green Entrada Aquifer above the Dewey Bridge confining unit, and then down into the Glen Canyon Aquifer. And structural complexities near the Moab Fault, very underrepresented here. It's actually a very complicated zone, but we should be well away from that. For the well, we're starting in the overlying Somerville Formation, and we'll go down into the Moab member and the Slick Rock member, and we'll have a screen in that aquifer, probably close to the top of the Dewey Bridge member, but really tailored to where we got the most water production. So we'll grout off 10 feet, or is it 10 or 20? Yeah, it's 10 feet above and below the Dewey Bridge member, and then put a screen in the upper part of the Navajo Sandstone. Again, the exact placement will depend on where we start to see high water production. So that's the well plan. It's fairly straightforward stratigraphy. We have the experience of the Courthouse Wash monitoring well. Did I skip the map? Oh, no, I didn't. Those are shown. I won't go back to them. Just some scenery. This is a view to the north where you see 7 Mile Canyon, which is more or less east-west, feeding into Courthouse Wash. And then I think from the same point or close, looking south, you can see some of the standing water in the courthouse wash as it moves down through the park. And supports a pretty nice riparian zone, especially for the area, which is of course quite dry. On the bottom is Courthouse Wash Spring. In the upper, this is where perennial flow in Courthouse Wash starts, and you can actually see water coming out of the cross beddings in the. This is the Entrada sandstone. This is and then above that is alluvium, but that is not. I don't think any, if any, or very minor water is coming out of the alluvium. It's all coming out of the sandstone. This is 7 Mile Canyon Spring. Here on the left is the contact. JCTM is the Moab member. JES is the Entrada member. So you can see there's a bit of an erosional and sharp edge to that contact. And on the right, you can see that it's actually a transition zone with finer bedding and some horizontal bedding, which probably suggests some water-laid environments. But you can see the groundwater seeping out of that contact zone and forming a nice pool below, but also supporting some poison ivy. So one needs to take care. So that's the hydrostratigraphy, and that is why these two units combined are protected from future groundwater development, and why the Park Service wants to monitor potential effects of increasing groundwater development on the spring discharge as proxied by the groundwater levels in those. So again, we think they'll probably be starting today and setting the surface casing and drilling tomorrow, we hope. It should not take a long time. Relatively straightforward drilling in these, and again, we don't expect to encounter any faults. We're going to have them slow down at times and maybe do some tests on the water production, and especially when we think we're getting to the contacts, which are in well cuttings are pretty subtle. I've looked at them pretty carefully myself, as well as others in our program. And it's a very important relative to the protection zone to get those contacts right. And as I mentioned, there's also a tendency for the Dewey Bridge to not return cuttings. So we'll just be taking our time with it. So I did add in some overview of new projects and ongoing projects. First, the wetlands section. Diana's been inundating Jodi with grants lately. She is applying for 3 wetland program development grants. This program has been the foundation of the wetland section efforts for the past 5 to 8 years. Diane's actually submitted drafts of those. I reviewed them earlier this week. We're going to produce a new field guide to wetland plants. Look at Mountain Valley wetland condition. Those are very underrepresented in the current coverages, and focus on the Utah Lake area. This is in addition to projects ongoing in the Great Basin, Cache County, and Millard County, which all involve a variety of water monitoring, mapping, GIS mapping, and on-site assessment and descriptions. We're, I think, reasonably hopeful of success of these. If you look at Diane's record over the past 5 years or so, she's brought in more than $2 million in grants. And that is combined EPA, other state funds, mostly from the Endangered Species Mitigation Fund, and also some money from the BLM. And so those grants would support, their efforts for another 3 to 4 years ongoing. We've also had new projects in the groundwater section. I think the geothermal potential assessment in basins has been mentioned. Stefan and Christian were the co-PIs on that. And that's a really nice grant, 3 years. And relative to the economics, no match by UGS. The 7 Mile Canyon monitoring well, which we're hoping to have finished off fairly soon. Paul Incan Brandt is going to start kind of a bit of a new career direction in looking at, or in trying to establish a network of on the ground evapotranspiration measurements. This is going to be funded mostly by the Division of Water Rights, and the overall objective is to calibrate imagery-based estimates of evapotranspiration, and those will be used for a really wide variety of water rights management and agricultural management issues. They want us, water rights also wants us to continue our work near Bryce Canyon. We're finishing off our hydrogeologic study now this year, and then we'll continue on to a water budget study, which just involves quantifying as best we can the various flow-throughs and recharge and discharge elements. That's another area where there's a lot of economic pressure for continued groundwater development, and it has a very relatively thin basin fill aquifer, and that's really the only productive aquifer in the region. So we have to be very careful about not overdeveloping it. And then we have our ongoing projects, a wide variety of topics, including in watershed work, our standard hydrogeologic basin work, forage, and a variety of monitoring. We've also added geological logging by Peter. He's actually down there right now at Dalton Wells, logging. He and Will are logging a deep well in the area of the proposed state park there. So just, this is the one I just typed in as the others were talking here, but overall, we're pretty heavily outside funded. This is, I think, is as high as it's been since I've been looking at the budget. And like the others, I'm concerned that we won't actually collect all of that based on present staff. And then we seem to always have interest in additional projects. Yeah, that's my overview. I'll just happy to talk about any questions you might have.
Thank you, Hugh. Any questions for Hugh?
This is Pete. I have a quick one about the wetlands mapping. I know that there's the National Wetlands Map, and Utah has its own update that goes into the national map at some point. If we had a project and we wanted the best wetlands to use, where would layer to use, where would we go?
So the NWI National Wetlands Information Map is the starting point for their work, but they have found that it always needs significant upgrading. In fact, one of the grant proposals centers around exactly how to do that, to combine it, to take that layer and combine it with other GIS layers that indicate the presence of wetlands and kind of narrow down where the most likely wetlands are. And then from there, they're finding success with actually hand digitizing wetlands in GIS, complemented by field corroboration. So the answer is that NWI is the standard, but basically Diane and her group are on a long-term mission to up that standard, and we would then be I think our website would be the new standard for accurate wetland mapping.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I'll turn it back to Elissa to run.
Well, Bill, are there any additional comments or thoughts from anybody from UGS before we adjourn?
I think we're done on our end.
Okay. Just wanted to give you the opportunity, but I just wanted to thank you for, of course, for presenting such a great report and really securing that funding for your budget, and then going way above and beyond in a couple of other areas. And I am a little concerned that you have a lot of work, and but that is what I'm. It's a great problem to have. So I'm hoping that I know.
We share the concern. We share
it.
it.
Yes, I am concerned, but I am really, really happy that you have been able to secure a lot of those additional grants and funding. So I'm really grateful. And was there anything anybody else wanted to add from the board before we adjourn?
This is Ken. When is our next meeting?
Great question.
Good question. Cheryl? Yeah, Cheryl.
I gotta check. Hold on just a minute.
I'm looking too.
Yeah, I believe we would be looking at setting dates for calendar year 2021, since we won't be having the field trip in September, and that's normally our last board meeting for the calendar year.
It would be January then?
Be January.
Okay.
It's usually mid-January.
Yeah, last year it was actually the 8th of January, earlier this year. So we had the 8th of January, I think the 15th of April, and the 10th of August, and the 12th of August, plus our field trip. Did I get that right?
I'm out until I believe the 16th of January. Do you mind having it on the 20th, which is a when? Do you want to continue to have them on the Wednesday? I guess that's the first question.
Good for me.
Good for me.
I'm gonna, hang on a minute. I have, the only caveat in the back of my brain is.
We just probably want to stay away from the last week of January. That's when we typically have our legislative meetings.
Yeah, the legislature started this year on the 27th of January. So we just need to not, because we tend to get called in early when that starts.
Yeah.
So the 20th would probably work.
Does that work all right?
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking to see what that date was, because that was my only concern. So yeah, it might, looking at the calendar, it could start as early as the 25th or the 1st of February. So yeah, I'd say 20th is good.
And then did you want to set the April one as well, like perhaps April 14th, just the middle Wednesday there?
Sure. You get on the calendar first.
Yeah.
I'm typing you into my calendar right now.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
Do we want to wait on the August one until we get a little closer, or do you want to pick a date now? Middle of August would be like the 11th.
Let's do it, and then if we need to adjust, we can.
Okay. You getting all this down, Cheryl?
Yep, I'm getting it.
Thank you. Okay. And we'll talk about field trip in January.
So
See
we
where
decided
are.
the 11th on August then?
Yes.
Yeah. We could do it down to the 18th, but I think a little earlier in August is probably better.
Okay.
We can adjust if we need it. We've adjusted a lot this year.
We're good at adjusting.
That's right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I think if we don't have anything else, I just want to commend you, Bill, and all the rest of the UGSF, all of you who presented. It's a great report. We appreciate all of your talents and expertise and your dedication. So thank you so much. Just really want to just express that, and everybody stay safe.
Okay. Thank you. Is there some script you have to read to close the meeting?
Yep, I do. It is now 11:26, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thanks.